Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining our webinar today on cybersecurity with Federated Insurance, which is a NATSO Chairman Circle member. Cybercrime is one of the fastest growing and most dynamic exposures in business today. Hardly a day goes by when we don't hear about a security breach or incident involving the loss of sensitive data to hackers. Today, we're going to discuss several different layers of risk management and how Federated can help reduce businesses' exposure, as well as coverage options that they have available to transfer the risk to an insurance carrier. With that, I will hand it over to Steve Searle with Federated Insurance. And if you have questions, just go ahead and drop them in the Q&A in the chat, and we'll answer them at the end.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time today to go through this webinar with us. And what I'm hoping is that this is a good review of what's going on in your business and maybe a chance to take a look at some things you could be doing to perhaps tighten it up even more. And if it's not a review, certainly point you in the direction of where you can get started. So as mentioned, we're talking about managing your cyber risk, and the title of the presentation is Coverage is Not Enough. And that is quite true, because gone are the days when you can just buy more insurance and not do anything, okay? So a couple of years ago, you could secure a $5 million cyber policy, and they were relatively inexpensive, and those days are gone. A $5 million policy now would run you well over six figures into that. And certainly the qualification standards are much higher, because we'd have to be living under a rock or not seeing what's going on the daily news and not be aware of the volume of cyber events that are going on across all types of industries. And certainly energy industries, manufacturing industry, but energy is one of the top of them. So we'll talk about what we can do today to address that. So why are we having this conversation? So let's take a look at the stats. You know, what makes the big numbers and the big exciting titles in the newspaper and the news are the big companies that get hit. But quite honestly, when you boil the numbers down, 61% of cyber attacks affected companies with fewer than 100 employees. That's what we like to call our small to medium-sized businesses. And they're getting hit more than the larger companies. And the reason is because a company with less than 100 employees likely is not going to have on staff an IT director or have that resource available. And so that they know that that's an exposure there. They know that's where they can go get hit and they can attack people. They're not ready to go. Additionally, 51% of these same size companies do not know or do not have any plan in place on how to respond to a cyber attack. Who do I call? What do I do? What's next? What's my next steps? And those two go hand in hand, right? The smaller businesses are getting hit because they know that they're not ready and prepared to do that. Additionally, let's take a look at this number. 90% of data breaches, and again, that's the theft of personally identifying information that is stolen from a business. The personally identifying information is personal information that you can't just go find in the white pages. 90% are initiated by a phishing attack. And a phishing attack is a type of social engineering. And that's one of these blanket umbrella type words that covers a lot of different types of ways to con people, because that's all that is. There's phishing, there's smishing, there's whale spearing, there's one called pig butchering. There's all these different ways. And essentially, it's a way to con someone, to influence someone to give up their personal information or information to gain into a network. So it's not Tom Cruise coming out of the air conditioning vent on a rope and stealing a jump drive off a computer. It's literally someone clicking on something they shouldn't have done, or someone having a conversation with someone on Facebook or whatever and getting access into the company. The next statistic is 21 days is the average number of interrupted business days due to a cyber event. And I want to make really clear, we're going to talk about cyber events, not just ransom demands, because not all cyber events include a ransom demand, and even the ones that do, not all those demands are paid due to a lot of good reasons. And so 21 days. That 21-day number is kind of interesting, though. If you think about when hackers are actually in your network, cybersecurity people in the industry, they estimate that a hacker can be bouncing around in a business network for 3 months, 4 months, looking for opportunity, getting information, looking at accounts payables, looking at accounts receivables, looking for an opportunity to strike. and cause mayhem there. So you may be down for 21 days, but they've been in there looking around for a while. So let's talk about when we talk about a cyber event, the question that comes up is how secure is the data that your business maintains? Because that's where we start when we have this conversation. How secure is the data your business maintains? And that one question generates a lot of additional questions. So we look at whose data are we concerned about? Because employee records come into play too. That's protected information. There's HIPAA information. All their file information is included in that data. Client information, any proprietary designs, and your own business data is included in that. And what types? Of course, social security number, dates of birth, mother's maiden name, driver's license. It goes on and on and on. And that social security number, that's the big one. That's the keys to the kingdom. Okay, that's the one that gets them all. That's what they're looking for. And again, they're not going to go into one business and find all of this. They'll hit multiple businesses. Maybe they got something from Target or GMAC, and then they find something in your network that's available or confirms it. And on the dark web, the seedy underbelly of the intranet, this stuff is monetized and used and sold. They've got digital versions of you and I out there that they use for a lot of variety of negative purposes. We look at where's the location? Paper records. That's data. Data is just information. Doesn't matter if it's a social security number written on a bar napkin, stuck in a paper folder, and put in an employee file in a file cabinet. That is personally identifying information. That is at risk. Okay, and then include obviously electronic records. We also have to ask who has access to the personal data. Do all employees? Do you give it to a third party to manage? That's not uncommon, right? You go to a third party and you provide into a payroll business. What's the contract with them? And then how secure? We look at physical controls and certainly electronic control. So all that deal, when I talk about in my business, you have to kind of go and find out this type of information. So let's move forward. Let me tell you a cyber claim story. And this is one that goes on and on and on every single day. Once upon a time, an employee opened an email, the end. And these are actual examples of a phishing emails, okay, that someone at your business might receive. And roughly 3.4 billion times a day, a phishing email is going out, looking for someone to click, looking for someone to bite, hence the name. And it could be from Microsoft. It could be from American Express. It could be from Amazon, advising there's something wrong with your account. It could be from wherever it's from. And someone clicks on it and away they go. 3.4 billion times. So it's no surprise that 95% of cyber events are due to employee error. And that includes owners of the business too, not just people working in the office. That includes owner of the business. So 95%, again, it's not someone coming in through the heat duct vent. It's somebody clicking on something they shouldn't have clicked on. And away it goes. So what happens next? They're in your system. There's a variety of things that happens. Okay. We have personal information that could be breached, proprietary information, certainly business operations closed down. Ransom demand. There might be a ransom demand involved in there. What happens if that malware, that bad software that's on your network, and you email that to your customer or vendor and they are compromised? Who's responsible for that? Certainly investigation costs, notification costs. Every single state in the nation has a notification requirement for affected individuals. They must be notified as soon as reasonably possible. So if you got a lot of client records in your network across multiple states, every single one of those individuals has to be notified. And you've probably received one of these letters. I've received them that says, hey, we're sending you know, we'll let you know that we've had a data breach, and they have to offer them credit monitoring services and things of this sort. That all has to be provided for by state law. And who's going to pay for that? Recreating information, both on paper and electronic, maybe there's a lawsuit. If you're in the state of California, you're very open to that. The Attorney General in California, if there's a violation of the California regulations of privacy, they can hit you for $750 per record. So out there in California, and we operate in California, you have to provide the information to that. And that's why you'll see these websites that says, do not sell my information. That's driven by the data privacy laws in the state of California. Certainly fines and penalties could be PCI fines, payment card industry, right? That's Visa, MasterCard, because you did not have proper security protocol, or even the state and federal regulations. And then certainly your business email could be compromised. And we'll talk about that. Business email compromise right now is probably the larger exposure than ransom demand for small to medium-sized business. And we'll talk about what that looks like. Of course, the bigger one is loss of business reputation. It only takes one heck to wipe out 10 attaboys, and that's a big one. You spent your life and your career building a level of trust with clients and vendors, and now that has been destroyed potentially because of a data breach. And I've seen statistics out there that say about 70% of the people would not do business with a business who's had their information violated or breached. But what's really driving the insurance cost, again, we hear about the ransom demands, but it's the loss of business income, it's the investigation cost, the notification cost, and the cost to recreate that information. That's what drives the insurance cost. It's not the ransom demand. In fact, even if a ransom demand is actually paid, it makes up maybe 10 to 15% of the payment of the claim cost. That's driven by these additional costs that are going on. Because if you think about it, that business income clock is ticking, and you have to investigate a ransom demand. The cash registers aren't ringing. And even if you do get your information back, let's say it's investigating to say, look, it's in the best interest, maybe we should pay this. There is no guarantee that the information is valid anymore. It could be corrupted. It may not be in its entirety. I mean, these are criminals, right? Just because you give them money doesn't mean they're going to honor their obligations. It's not like a really nice transaction between two reputable parties. They're criminals. And so if they can jam you on the way out, they will do that. So that's what's driving these additional costs on those four areas. So what can we do, right? What can we do? And that's the challenge. This is one of those deals that coverage is not enough, and you've got to be proactive and addressing this on a daily basis. So we look at the different ways, and let's break it down into some categories. And these aren't our categories. If you Google cybersecurity best practices, the government CISA, you'll look at these items, and these follow those guidelines. And so first and foremost, you need to know it, scale it, plan it, lock it, train it, and repeat. And continues in a circle. So we'll walk through what these look like. So know it. We kind of talked about that a little bit. Who, what, where, and why. We talked about data inventory, literally cradle to grave. You need to know what devices in your business store sensitive data. How is it received? Where does it go? Right? Who do you give it to? What kind of information is collected? Where is that stored? And who has or could have access to the information? So do all employees have access to it? Or is your network partitioned to only allow certain levels of access based on job descriptions? Or what are you doing to make sure that not everybody can get, into your network and get access to this information? There's something they call rogue employee, and we don't want to, we know we have good employees, right? But we don't want to have the ability to have someone have access and get a bad idea. Have a little side gig where they're selling information on the dark web. So does everybody have access or should have access to your information? Secondly, plan it. Prep for the unexpected. You need to know what to do. You have spill prevention plans, right? You know what to do if you have a vehicle accident. You've got a vehicle insurance card. You may have an accident report card in your card. You call your insurance company. You know what to do when a workers' compensation claim. First notice of loss, who you take them to, what happens if you have the screen of death or you've got a data compromise. Who do you call? And so make sure you have an incident response plan so you know who you call. And at a minimum, it starts with your insurance carrier. Again, we're not the only one that offers cyber, but you should absolutely call your insurance carrier if you have coverage of cyber policy in place. You may be required to contact the FBI, but start with the insurance carrier. Typically, that's where they're going to generate all that, and they will get the other parties involved, perhaps local authorities. And then what type of system security protocols do you have in place? What is your steps? You call who, and they contact this person, and the system and network is shut down, and then we go to look for our backup information. So what are your steps that you have to do in the event of a data breach or a cyber attack. Again, same situation as you would go through with any type of accident or claim. Plan it, back it up, back up your information. Daily is best, weekly at the least. That's the first question they're going to ask you is, do you back up your information, and how and when did you last back it up? If we can go in, if the investigator goes in and said, look, we're backed up constant, or it was last night, we're in a much better situation, you are, in a claim situation to be able to get that information and recreate it. And then have a redundancy, okay? Be off network and have a hard copy of key information, all right? They call 3-2-1, 3 copies, okay? 2 electronic, 1 hard copy, 1 on your network, 1 on the cloud off network, and a hard copy stored. And then more importantly, test it. But every 6 months, do a table talk exercise. Can you reload the data? Does it work? Are there issues with it? So you have to know that it's there. Okay, so back up your information, puts you in a much better position than not doing so. Lock it down. Multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor MFA is one of the primary effective cybersecurity things you can have in place, right? So what are the 2 types? If you have offsite access to your network, mandatory, absolutely mandatory. If you have a manager ringing in, you want to know that's who that is. Option 1 is employees with access to the network for their own email, and option 2 is C option 1. Anybody who has access or could have access to your network, you need to know that's who they say they are. It'd be no different than who's driving your vehicles. You wouldn't just leave the keys in your truck and leave it out there in front of your business and say, go for it, right? The same thing with your multi-factor authentication. Your MFA is a huge, huge component of that, and a mandatory requirement for just about every, well, I would say not just about every cybersecurity insurance policy in the industry is consistent use of multi-factor authentication. Secure email is one you might be able to add to it, okay? If you're sending invoices, if you're sending contracts, use secure email. If you're sending any personally identifying information, I don't care if you're sending information to Federated, or if you're not with Federated, you're sending it to your insurance carrier or your insurance agent, marketing representative, send it secure email. You do not want someone to be what they call a man-in-the-middle crime and hijack an email, all right? That's where they're going to find out what's going on in your business. That's where they're going to find out what accounts payables and receivables you have. So use that secure email, and certain request that if you're in contracts. You can set that up on the front end. Make it a contract requirement. It's been available for years, use of secure email. And it's pretty simple. It goes in your Outlook. This is an example of what it looks like in Microsoft Outlook. There's a piece right there in encryption. And if you have that software in place, if you send an email that has identified information that is deemed personally identifiable, and the system will do that, you'll get a message that that email was blocked, not sent, and to send it securely. That's how effective that is. So there's a good example of when you can take on immediately. Additionally, email, secure email, have an incoming email banner, right? We all know who we're working with inside, but at least this gives you a hint that this is from someone outside the organization. I should probably pay special attention to it. Now, there's no guarantee, right? If someone's in your network and bouncing around, they could be sending fake emails. It looks like it's coming from Bob from accounting. But at least this gives you a start to understand I should take a special look at this, and you can set these up. Lock it down. We talked about business email compromise. Doing something I like to call the digital double signature. I'm old enough to still remember when we wrote checks. But, and I mean this most sincerely, before sending any, and I repeat, any online payment, please get a verbal verbal confirmation with an individual that you know at that business, or a prearranged number, not from the number in the email, but from someone at that business that says, hey, I want to just call and confirm, this is your account information, this is the amount we owe. It's standard bookkeeping practice at that point. Don't use the information in the email, because very well you could get a invoice that's been manipulated, and it looks like a proper invoice. It looks like it came from a vendor from Searle Incorporated, and everything else follows because they dummied it up because they're in your network. Or worse yet, you could have really, really good cybersecurity practices. You could have an external email banner, and an email like this comes through, and maybe the vendor or customer you're using has been compromised. And this has come from their system. And it looks exactly right. And it's a fake invoice. And if you don't take the time to call and ask and confirm, there's going to be an issue with that. And certainly document, have a log somewhere. I don't care if it's an Excel file or a paper log, have a log, write it down. Spoke to Steve, Steve Searle, here's the address, here's the amount, payment sent. Okay. And if you don't think, well, if you think, man, that's a lot of work, Steve, and I understand, I get it, we're busy, then you need to be comfortable with the fact that you will lose money. So maybe you put a parameter in place. We're only going to check on payment amounts over 10 grand. We're comfortable losing $10,000 or 25,000. That's what's going to happen. You will lose money in these events. And this is why it's becoming a larger issue with small to medium sized businesses. I mentioned that ransom demands are becoming less common for a small to medium sized business. So what happens in a ransom is there's a demand and it gets investigated. That takes time. They don't get their money. And then a negotiator comes in and they talk about, look, let's negotiate this down. That takes time. And if it is paid, it's going to be less than what was demanded, or B, it's not paid at all. But if you get a fake invoice and you fire off $50,000, there's no discussion with anybody. It's gone. There's no negotiation. There's no squabble. It's gone, period. And so make sure for any online payment, I don't care if it's from the CEO, if it's an employee who's changed their bank account information, you get an email saying, hey, Steve, I've changed my bank for my paychecks. Please send them here. Call before that and get confirmation that Steve is actually the guy that sent you that. And then pay it forward. Here's something you can do when you're working with your customers, vendors, just let them know. So here it is. ABC Business. Searle Enterprises will contact you by phone to confirm account information and payment amount before sending any online payment. We ask that you take the time to contact us directly at contact and phone number to verify our account information and payment amount prior to making any online payments to us. Please contact us immediately if you receive a request from us to change payment method via email or text. So it puts the onus on them that they should follow standard bookkeeping practices to also check that. So pay it for them, let them know. And yeah, it can seem annoying, and I get that, but they'll get it too. Everybody's at risk in this, and they'll get it too. You're doing them a favor, notifying them, and certainly ask them to notify you. Moving forward, password managers. Everyone should be using a secure password. And by what we mean by that, again, is at least 8 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't work anymore. It needs to have a mixture of uppercase, lowercase, letters, numbers, and some special character. We're all used to that right now for logging into websites. Okay, that's a deal. They tell you that's not enough characters. And the reason we look at 8 characters, the time it takes to a hacker to brute force, they can put in an algorithm to try to hack into a network. 8 characters with a mixture takes about 7 years. So that's pretty complicated. And there are websites now that want 15 characters. And how that works is the longer the password and the more complicated the password, the more difficult it is. Your password to your network is your company's social security number. It's the keys to the kingdom. Okay, that's a huge component of it. So using a password manager helps that. It'll notify the employees. You probably use it now. It'll tell them when to change it. It'll let them know you can't use that. It's very similar to the last one, things of this sort. And additionally, there are golden rules, right, with passwords, golden rules. And follow me here. You should treat your passwords like you treat your underwear. Treat your passwords like you treat your underwear. Never leave them out in public. Change them often. And for heaven's sake, don't share them with your friends. You would not take your social security number, put it on a Post-it note, and stick it on your laptop or your desktop. You certainly would not do that with your password. That is your corporate social security number. That's the keys to your business. Some basics here, lock it down, WPA2 encryption. That's pretty standard encryption these days. Right now, it is certainly the best as we can have, or higher if available. Change the set security identifier on your wireless router. That's the name when it comes out. Change that. Okay. Change the admin credentials on your wireless router. So when they come out of the factory, they have credentials or passwords set up. Make that your own. And if you have a chance to set up your router, make sure you're not, try to, if you can, don't use a name that's easily identifiable, right? If it's Serial Convenience Incorporated and I have a wireless router, I wouldn't call it Serial Convenience Incorporated. There are companies, again, if they want to have access, they can sit in front of your business and jump onto your router system and away they go. They're in your network. Okay, so take time to make those changes and certainly set your router to take automatic software updates. Websites. Remember those websites that popped up before in that screen? 3.4 billion fake phishing websites on a daily basis. If you have any vendors or customers that you commonly use, I don't care if it's Federated or your other insurance company, set it as a favorite, set it as a bookmark, okay, to prevent misdirection. And then make sure you're confirming that it's a secure website. That S means secure. And you might get these notices now. If you use Google on your tablet or use it on your cell phone, if you got it set up for security monitoring, I know I received this. It tells me this is not a secure website. Do you wish to proceed? So add it as a bookmark. Because when these websites come up, and a good example is a bank account, because this happens all too often, sadly. You're trying to log into Wildlife of Texas, your banking institution, and I'm in there trying to log in, and I'm typing in, and I'm typing in, and my password's not working. So I look on that nice, beautiful looking website, and I look for customer service, and I call the number on this phenomenal, beautiful website for Wildlife of Texas, and I call the 800 number from that phishing website email. And guess what? They are more than willing to help me log into my account. In fact, what they're going to probably help me do is change my password. And then you're in your bank, and then they're off. Okay. So save them as a favorite, something you can start doing today. Bookmark them. Employee training, employee training, employee training. You need to educate your employees. You need to stay informed on what's going on in the industry and repeat. It's like washing your hair. If 95% of cyber events are due to employee error, that means that your employees are your first line of defense for cybersecurity. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can sign up, and we'll look at that. You can sign up for email phishing training, and the system takes care of itself. Works quite well. So why are we talking about this? Cyber underwriting, if you get a contract that requires a higher limit, let's say you need a 500,000, 1 million, $2, $3 million policy. These are the common requirements. They're very similar to what we just talked about, but you will have to have multi-factor authentication. They're going to want to know about your backup. We'll have to have encrypted. They want to know what type of scheduled and consistent cyber awareness employee training is going on. Depending on the scope of your business and the information you handle, they may require you to have endpoint detection, right? Or monitored endpoint protection. That's a third party, kind of like ADT. That's a third party who's monitoring your network and your website and looking for someone who's maybe doing multiple attempts at a password, right? That's a potential hack. And that endpoint is basically an access point to your network, cell phone, desktop, laptop, and they can address that. Potentially vulnerability assessment. Who's looking at your website? Is it vulnerable to a network hack? Certainly current software, antivirus and malware, and potentially may want to know about encryption of email and mobile devices. What are you doing that you can qualify? Again, coverage is not enough. The days of just buying policies and limits are gone. So what's available out there? That seems like a lot. If you're with Federated and it'd be a bit disingenuous to say we're not the only company that does this, right? Other companies can assist with this, but we have what we call the best practices checklist. You can certainly work with it's a vendor we use through our MyShield. You can do an online assessment called Cyber Maturity, and it looks at people, protocols, and posture, and it looks at what are you doing in your business, 19 different scoring points. And most importantly, it's not like, hey, you failed. It's, hey, you need to address this position. Our recommendation is to do this, and it'll show you where that resource is available in our our cyber safety website. Monitoring, okay? Find and fix security vulnerabilities. In cyber safety, again, you can enter your website and it will do a quarterly scan for free. An additional discounted fee if you need it more than that, but it'll do a quarterly scan and you're going to get a report that's going to tell you what's going on. And this is what it looks like. I don't know what all this means. It talks about unencrypted communications. It talks about an A6 security misconfiguration. I don't know what those are, and you may not know what those are. But what we have available to you is we have a guy and people who can look at that and talk with you about that. They're going to ask about your network. They're going to ask about that information. And through cyber safety, you can go in, we call it our cyber concierge. You can talk to a cybersecurity expert. When you click contact the concierge, you can either call directly or schedule it. There's a calendar right there. Schedule it. They will call you at the time you want. There you can get access to, you provide them access to that website vulnerability scan. They will get access to your cyber maturity, and you can have a very robust conversation on what's going on in cybersecurity and the recommendations, and you can get going on that. And the reason that thing is called cyber maturity is because we expect that your plan will mature over time and get more robust as you move forward. Security policies in place. That's also available in cyber safety that you can download and make your own for your company. And those policies range from you can get your own incident response, network security. What do we do in business email compromise? That's that money in banking. What type of remote work policy you have in place? You can have these when you're onboarding your employees, when you're doing quarterly reviews and updates, perhaps during performance reviews, you can review these. Additionally, training your employees. Okay, we talked about training your first line of defense through our learning management system available through MyShield. We have training today. That is a complimentary learning management system. You get your employees entered in that, and they can take these training modules. So imagine I get hired onto your company and you say, Steve, welcome to our company. Here's a module on safe web browsing, email security, et cetera, et cetera. And you can set these up on a calendar basis, on a monthly basis, quarterly basis. Just go to these employees and have them take those tests or the training materials, and management is notified whether or not they've taken it. Additionally, KnowBe4. KnowBe4 is the company we use, is one of the top companies in the industry that does phishing email training. And here's some good examples of training that we have available through there. You can set up KnowBe4 to do phishing response or tests through Federated. It's a discounted rate per employee, and they'll send fake emails, and you'll have a little button on your screen that they'll go back there, a little button on your Microsoft, if it's Outlook, but you can trigger it and say it's a phishing email. And if they actually click on one of these test emails, they'll get a notification that this was a simulated phishing email, and you'll be notified shortly, and then you'll get triggered an email to say, hey, Steve, appreciate you for participating in the simulated phishing email. Please take this refresher course on identifying phishing emails. And I have to take that in a certain amount of time, or my manager or management gets notified that that was not accomplished. Again, the system will take care of it, and we try to get our employees cyber aware on a daily basis. So let's talk about insurance. Cover it. Cover the basics. You need to have at least first-party damages. That's money out of your pocket. You're the first party. What are we talking about? We're talking about investigation costs, notification costs, mandatory services when we talk about a breach of personally identified information. We're talking about lost revenue when it comes to loss of business income. Certainly data recovery services. How do we establish or reset up the data that we lost, both electronic and paper? And then what type of software repair is in place to get that information back in order and running? Third-party damages. Okay, this is the damage you cause to somebody else. So maybe you get sued for claims of negligence or breach of contract. Maybe you're doing everything right. You can still get sued, right? You maybe have a privacy lawsuit, settlements and costs, and certainly compliance files. Those should be part and parcel of an insurance policy. And these are included in Federated's policy, mind you. As we go forward, you can certainly talk to your marketing representative for additional details. So again, we mentioned additional resources and materials. If you're with Federated, you can contact your marketing representative or contact your risk management resource center. Talk to your consultant there. And available through MyShield are the information and access points for cyber safety, know before, and training today. In fact, if you contact the Risk Management Resource Center, they will gladly walk you through signups and things of this sort. Several of these are single sign-on, which means once you're in the Federated network, you'll be able to sign on. Some of them require an additional sign-on because they want to get information on the size of your company, number of employees, industry, so they can help specialize and direct you information relative to your industry.